Adgarename, Jagarename, Sakarename, Siddhigarudevaname, Adgarename, Jagarename, Sakarename, Siddhigarudevaname. I'd like everyone to know that this is my first podcast. And we decided that I tell stories better by telling them than writing them. So it was the idea of Wa, backed by Guru Shabad, that I start this program. And I'm very excited to do it because for me, telling stories has one of the greatest impacts on my life. Having been told stories, whether verbally or written, like I'm reading the Hopi story of creation, and it is unbelievable. The pictures that come to my mind when I read it, it's just too much. I just smile and smile and smile at this ancient wisdom. Although I'm not as ancient as a Hopi from their civilization, I've been on this planet almost 76 years. It's so hard to believe when how could I have lived this long? And then I started remembering way back when, through photos, through just remembrances, through old letters I'd written to my mother when I was a hippie, to even my report cards that my mother saved. When she died at almost 93, she died so beautifully. She died with such peace that I thought this is a possibility of how anyone can leave their bodies. Then when I'd go to India, one time I was sitting under a beautiful tree, and I was with Swamiji from Rishikesh. We sat there together and we were greeting a lot of his devotees there. And I said to Swamiji, this tree, something's really special under this tree. I'm feeling so peaceful and so ancient. And he's, yes, my dear. He said, a saint used to sit under this tree. And he left his body under this tree. And then he paused. And as Swamiji would do, it was almost like, in a cartoon where that, a picture cartoon where the round circle would come out of their mouth and written something in it, like he'd say something. And it was almost like that. It was like an aside that was just coming out of him, but it wasn't him. And he said, and this is where you'll leave also. And so I was so tripped out with that I go to this tree often when I get to India. So here I have these last 25 years of my life. For astrologically, they'll say that I'll live for 100 plus. But 76 years have gone before. How did I get to this place? How do we all get to the place that we're sitting in at this moment? I think for myself it was with great thanks and gratefulness. I didn't feel it always. In fact, there were times that I was so angry at my parents, my past, my culture, my background, myself. But through the grace of God, through the teachings and grace of my spiritual teacher, Yogi Bhajan, I'm finding my way, as I know you all can find your way. He had that expression when he came in 1969. I met him in 1970. Keep up. Keep up and you'll be kept up. When we heard it, I thought it was just kind of corny, actually. Keep up. What is that? Keep up and you'll be kept up. In fact, sometimes it made me so angry. Don't keep saying that, or do I have to keep reading it? But I knew it was based on truth. And I've used it so much as I've traveled all over the world. You just got to keep up. You got to get up every morning. You got to do your sadhana. You have to keep working on eating better, speaking better, acting better, loving better. And you will be kept up. You'll be carried. I remember that it was somewhere, that story that resonates over and over, where somebody's so mad at God. They say, God, walk with me. And then they said to God, upon the sand, there were not 2 footprints. You're not with me. And then God would say, those times is when I was carrying you. And I think that's what keep up, and you'll be kept up. You'll be carried. We'll be carried. We just got to go. Even in our darkest hour, even in the times when we just want to give up. I remember I was in theater school at the Art Institute of Chicago, Goodman Theater. I had won a scholarship, a full scholarship, because I'd actually flunked out of University of Illinois when I was 18, because I never, it sounds strange, but I never knew exactly when to go to class, where to go to class. I didn't know that there was those half-season tests and then finals. I don't know where my head was at. I was a Pisces who had worked so hard in earning $1,300. Now this was in the 50s, and I cleaned hairbrushes and cleaned a beauty parlor in this lady's house every day after school. And she wasn't very nice, and there was a lot of hair. That's all I remember, cleaning hair, brushes. But I did it because I needed to put enough money to go to university by the end of my graduating high school year, which was 1961. Well, I had $1,300, and I think at those days, that's how much it cost to be an in-state resident and go. But I never paid attention to the scholastic part of it. I got to take electives, which was water ballet and ice skating, and that was pretty cool. But the rest of the stuff, it was so boring, and it was unnecessary to my life at the time. But what enticed me so much, I lived in a city of 12 to 14,000 people. It was a farming community that was up and coming 23 miles out of Chicago. And I went to the University of Illinois. From that, there were 20,000, or maybe it was 25,000 people on this campus. And the campus was so gorgeous, and the student union was so big, everything was so glorious and didn't look like a farm or like my house, which is 4 kids and very, very small. So I saw these people that had saris on. I didn't even know what a sari was. I didn't even know really anything about India at the time, because you didn't study it in history at all. It was those third world countries in high school that you didn't discuss. It was Europe, it was America. And I saw these men in these Nehru outfits, and they smelled so good that I started following them around the campus. Not so they'd notice I was following them, but I'd be at a distance away that they didn't notice, because I was so enticed with, who are these people? Where are they from? They're different than us. I want to know who they are and what they do. So that might have been my first clue to my destiny, or one of many clues, but to India destiny, you might say. So anyways, so I had pretty low self-esteem after I flunked out of college, and I didn't want to tell my parents, and that was really scary, because every day I'd run to the mailbox, which was on Highway 66, to see if a letter had come, because I didn't want them to get it. I wanted to get it and then tell them somehow that I wasn't going to go back to University of Illinois because I hadn't made my grades. I didn't want them to get it. And I didn't want to tell them either. So, because I had so much low self-esteem, and I really thought I was so stupid and dumb and every single thing else, that is that the only thing I can possibly do in this world is to be a blue collar worker. That was a big thing, blue collar or white collar worker in the 50s. My father was a blue collar worker. He worked for the street department after he retired at the post office in Chicago sorting mail. He had only gone to maybe about fourth grade, I think. But he was so smart. He used to help us with algebra in high school. And I used to say, how can he know all this stuff? But he was just a very smart man, but just never got educated. He was a family of 13 kids. And sometimes they'd even live in a tent in a cow pasture. I mean, he'd be like 120 years old now. He was really old when he got married. But anyways, he was a good man. He was a straightforward man. He was an honest man. He had a big temper because he didn't have any tools. But I thought, I'll just be a blue collar worker. So I went and got a job at a factory. I rode my bike to the neighboring town, Lombard. And you can't believe this factory. I'm sure they don't have them anymore. But it was a toothpaste factory where they filled the toothpaste from the bottom, and then we stood there from 9 to 12 and 1 to 5 screwing the caps on the toothpaste. I'm sure everything is automated now. And then at lunch we had a little bit of time, a big whistle blew, and we took our packed lunches in our lunch buckets and went and ate somewhere, and then went back in, and then I'd ride my bike back home, because that's where I thought I was at. I was really, really lost. Well, my parents didn't take the flunking out too well because neither of them had gone to university, and my brother was very scholarly, very smart. My wonderful brother, 2 years older than me, he just seemed to do everything right. He was on the basketball team, and he got a scholarship, and he went to Iowa State and then University of Iowa, University of Michigan. He just was great. He was a great man, but he was determined. And I wasn't determined. I couldn't figure out what to do in my life. And so then I got this idea of going to theater school in Chicago. So somehow I made my way in there, and I auditioned from the toothpaste factory to auditioning at Goodman Theater and School of Drama of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I got a full scholarship. I guess I acted good. I don't know. I'd been in the Diary of Anna Frank, and I was very, very good in that. And I'd been in plays, and I'd put on plays and put on musicals and made costumes and, made up songs. And I was in a dance group during high school. So I think I did have a talent. But getting the scholarship was really something. So I moved into Chicago. I remember I lived in a house of the arts. It was a man who had this old Victorian house on the near north, about 3200 north. And I had a little room. It was $7 a week to live there. And I rode my bike or took, it wasn't a subway, it was one of those high trains, to the Art Institute. And I crossed that bridge, and I felt like I was at home. I was finally with people that were as cuckoo and quirky as me. There was just a bunch of weirdos there. The teachers were weird. We put on live productions. We even had a TV children's show in Hans Brinker and the Golden Skates. And then we put on like King Lear. Oh, that's what I was getting to. King Lear that I played in. He said, "Nothing will come of nothing." And I never forgot that. And it reminded me so much of keep up and you'll be kept up. You do nothing, you get nothing. So I worked so hard there. But I knew how to work because when I was a little kid, we worked in our gardens, we worked in our house. I always had part-time jobs. We shoveled snow in the winter for money. We went around with a little wagon and sold cucumbers and tomatoes. Um, yeah, I knew how to work. And I knew the joy of work. And I loved to work. And I've worked my whole life physically. And I think it's helped my health a lot, actually. Anyway, so I was in so many productions. I took so many great classes. I was in Tennessee Williams plays. It was really something. We'd go in at 7 in the morning for body movement, and we would study the history of theater. We studied, we played roles, we had to make tests, and then we would actually build production and put on live shows at night. So sometimes I'd be there at 7 in the morning till 2 a.m. at night. But I loved it. It was really something. But 2 years passed, and there was no more I could do there. And that's when I went west to San Francisco. That's when a whole new world unfolded for me. I was very longing, and I had the experience of longing to belong to this theater, to this school. But I knew somewhere that that wasn't it either. I never wanted to be in the movies. I just liked live theater. It was so true and so real, and I just loved it. Going back to where I was going to begin, which I didn't begin, was February 25th, 1943. It was very, very snowy. There was a blizzard, in fact, as my parents told me, when they were trying to drive 23 miles to Chicago. My mother was in labor. We had a 4-door Dodge 1937 sedan. Now, if you've ever watched any of those movies with, the mafia, the bad guys in Chicago, these are the kind of cars. It had the place where they would stand, before you open the doors. The doors would open out, and, it's where they'd have their machine guns and all that stuff. Well, somehow we had one. It was, 6, 7 years old. I don't know how my father got it. We kept it. We kept it till the 50s. And we were so embarrassed of this old car because in the 50s, everything had to be new, modern, shiny. And we had this old 4-door 1937 Dodge with 4 kids in the back seat, of which we would drive to Colorado for a holiday at my auntie's cabin up in Devil's Gulch above Estes Park. So we would always say to our parents, oh, no, we'll walk. And we get out like 2 blocks before school so the kids wouldn't see us in this old car. But this car made it. It made it to Chicago. And I remember in my birth certificate, it got there around 9. My mother entered, and I think I was born at midnight. So it must have been a pretty easy birth. And she had 4 kids. She had 4 kids, I think it was something like 36, 38, 40, 42. She had them later because she was in love with my dad for 15 years. He was 15 years older than her. And he never came around to realizing that's who I need to be with. He was kind of out and about in Chicago, you might say. But when they got married, the devotion they had to each other, I've never seen anything like it. The devotion was unsurpassed. It was so beautiful. So I was born. And in my birth, as I was told by my mother, because every birthday of my year, she wrote me the same story of going through the snowstorm, getting to the blah, blah, blah. But when I got home, I wasn't well. Everything I ate, I couldn't keep it down. And it went on for some weeks, and my health was failing. My weight gain was not happening, and my parents were very worried about me, like, what's wrong? So it was finally diagnosed I had this thing called pyloric stenosis. Nowadays, I think it can be remedied where the pyloric valve closes to the stomach for some reason. It can be remedied not even with surgery, but with pharmaceuticals. So, as my mother told me, they rushed me back to the hospital. I had this long operation, and I still have a scar from my solar plexus all the way to my pubic bone, like long, and I was so not liking this big scar. They couldn't have gone in like they do these days. And I lived. But the doctor said I would never be normal. How true are those words? She'll never be normal, whatever that meant. So I came home, and I'm sure I got weight gain, and I got okay. And then the years went on. And I'm going to close right here because it proved true what the doctor said. I never was normal. I think everyone who's reading this and enjoying this perhaps will also say to themselves, I wasn't normal either. What is normal? Who wants to be normal? I leave you with this. Thank you so much for listening. My first time doing this, but I'm enjoying it because I didn't even know what I was going to say when I started. So here we go. Sat Nam. God bless you.